Hi, my name is Megan Stat. I'm the Research and Instructional Data Consultant, and I have a study to show you on general education and student achievement. So, what this study measured was students' disability, time they spend in general education classes, and how they perform on the standardized tests. So, we know that schools must provide services that are structured to meet or exceed our academic and behavioral goals for our students. IDEA requires that all students be educated in the least restrictive environment and that these special education services that are provided have a giant spectrum. They can range from inclusion to pull out programs, and we're going to talk more about those. So, this study followed almost 4,000 special education students over 3 years in a county with various disabilities. They measured the percentage of time spent in general education courses over those 3 years, and then they also measured their performance on state assessments, the MSTEP, that were given in grades 3, 8, and 11 in both subjects, math and English language arts. This study had two questions that it was looking to answer. The first one has to do with the proportion of time spent in gen ed classes and their eligibility categories, the district that they served in, and if there's any interaction between the two. Question number two looked more at the relationship between that time and gen ed classes and their scores on the MSTEP, the English language arts and the math ones. So to answer question number one, the percentage of time spent in gen ed classes for students receiving special education services was all around this 70% here for the 3 different years. The time spent varied significantly by disability, by school district, and a combination of the two. So there really wasn't a correlation to a certain disability requiring a certain amount of time in a general education class. It was kind of different between the districts. So this gives us a little leeway. Question number two, remember, related that time spent to how well they did on state assessments. And for both of those tests, student scores increased as they spent more time in general education classes, which is awesome. However, there was not a significant amount of data that showed a benefit for those students in gen ed classes that take the alternate MSTEP assessments. So this approach collected data on obviously the time spent and their assessment scores, but they also collected data on students' race, their gender, and if they were eligible for free and reduced lunches, in addition to their actual disability. Then they used a two-way analysis of variance in order to determine if there was an interaction between these first two things. So my question is, why did we need to collect students' race, gender, if they were eligible for free and reduced lunch, or even the disability if we were focusing on their assessment scores? So my next questions for this would be, one, are the pullout programs less effective than including the students in general education courses, or is there an improvement either way? Question number two, why do student scores not improve on the alternate state assessment? The article listed a little bit about how maybe it's just the skills that students get in the regular classroom. They get like the actual core curriculum skills, where in a resource room they might get like the test taking strategies a little more. And then I want to know if there's a relationship between the race and gender and free and reduced lunch with the amount of time in the classroom. Because we already know the amount of time in the classroom improves achievement scores. So if we go back to that race, gender, and free and reduced lunch, can that lead us to better achievement scores if we can identify some commonalities there? So, what are our goals here? Obviously, it's that our special education students receive the most effective services that are appropriate to them, and then in their least restrictive environment, like IDEA states. And then we also want them to improve their scores on the state assessment, that MSTEP. So, how do we get there? My recommendations after reading this would be to keep students in the general education classes as much as possible. Try to utilize push-in options and then monitor their progress. So, from this study, we know that students do better in general education classes. We do have to take some students out. So we need to make sure that when we do, it's for that intensive instruction and services in a resource classroom. And then we also need to see what students benefit from this. Some students will benefit more from being taken out of that environment, and some students won't. So we need to make sure that students have a personalized plan based on them and not just their disability. The push-in option for classrooms is awesome because it's kind of the best of both worlds. Students get to stay in that gen ed like situation, and then they also get the benefit of having a special education teacher there to meet any of those additional needs that they might have. A special education teacher push-in can team up and kind of do a team teaching thing where the students might not even know who the special ed and gen ed teachers are, or it can work as kind of like a lead and support role depending on how comfortable the people are and depending on the needs of the students in the classroom. Now, obviously, this is costly because you are paying two teachers to be in a room, but I feel like the benefits outweigh that cost because our students are succeeding. And then progress monitoring. This goes for all students, not just those receiving special education services. When we have data and we make decisions based on data, it helps ensure that what we are doing is working and that students are benefiting from it. And regardless of whatever approach we use, the push-in, the resource, the pulling students out, we need to make sure that their progress is monitored. And if something's working, continue doing it. And if it's not, maybe look at different options. So that was my overview of this general education and student achievement study. Thank you.